Thank you, Kate. I hope you hear me. Yes. Okay. Thank you to give me the opportunity to contribute to this important discussion. Maybe I first start honestly, and I have to admit that the peace movement, it's true, is not very strong today. And although history shows that on crucial moments, the peace movement is able to mobilize on a massive scale. We have seen that in the anti-nuclear weapon movement in the 80s, how many hundreds of thousands in each of the countries in Europe, for example, in the United States, have been joining the demonstration. And of course, let us not forget the anti-war movement against Iraq with millions in the streets worldwide. So I think we have shown, and we have a potentiality to reach out to people. And the question is how we manage to attract people again to the issues that are very important to struggle for. Let me start before I go to some propositions of what we can do as a peace movement to briefly go to the challenges that we are facing. And of course, it's often said we are witnessing these growing tensions between China and the US, and this is due to the same confrontation and war policies Washington is conducting against countries like Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, to name a few, just a few. And let's not forget, this is not mentioned, I guess, today, the other Cold War against Russia by US and NATO with many provocative political and military actions. Large-scale maneuvers, deployment of troops in the east, expanding NATO towards Russian borders, also to name a few of these actions. NATO used the war in Ukraine to sell the need for increased national defense budgets of each NATO member state to finance its global military hegemony. And in only 5 years, last 5 years, this caused the increase of defense spending or military spending by European and Canada, European NATO states, with 21%. This is frightening. And this is more than what NATO is expending. Our spending is almost $987 billion in 2019, which is more than half of the world's military expenditures. So in this multipolar world with several emerging superpowers, the military alliance of NATO seems determined to help maintain Western military, political, and economic hegemony in the world. Now with China as an emerging power, this US Western hegemony is in danger. And it's true. I think that China is trying to expand its global influence, as is the case with the Belt and Silk Initiative, but that as any other country is trying to defend its interests internationally. And important, but so far it has been acting mainly, China, with political and economic tools and in respect or of sovereignty of other countries. Even when also China, and this is what we often read in media, is increasing its own defense budget. It's growing strongly, that is true, but what is important to say, it represents still less than a third of what the US is spending. And China has only one foreign military base in Djibouti. With this one only military base, you can say the focus of China's defense policy is very much on defending its borders and interests in nearby areas. And unlike NATO, not on a global, not aimed at a global military control and focusing on foreign or conducting foreign military interventions. So let me go to the peace movement now. These big challenges, how can we address them? Just give you a few examples that we are still, let's say, able to have some influence, worldwide influence. Nevertheless, its weakness may be due to the campaign, for example, of ICANN, a platform of hundreds of peace organizations in many countries. 3 years ago, a treaty has been voted to ban nuclear arms worldwide. And this will soon enter into force once 50 nations or states have ratified it. We need only 5 more states and it enters into force. It's very important, I think, to address the whole issue of the danger of nuclear war and nuclear escalation. There are also to give another positive example, plenty of local movements struggling against US military bases with big successful demonstrations like in Okinawa and South Korea. And so, for example, in Okinawa, the US was forced to stop the expansion of a base or the construction of a new naval base. So it means that there is a force, and we have a force. So what are the opportunities we have today? I want just give a few, 4 or 5. The first, I think, is the Corona crisis shows us the tremendous social needs and the consequences of divestments in healthcare. And so many people in the world also want to stop climate change. So we need investments to connect it to a worldwide Green Deal. I think it's important in this the climate change concern. It's important that China announced its aims to become climate neutral in 2060. Only a few days ago, this message has been distributed. Although in the States, Trump is still denying that there is a climate change. At the same time, we see a rapid increase in military budgets and increasing investments in nuclear arms. So this is an opportunity, I think, to join forces with social and environmental movements as the Global Day Against Military Spending each year in April is trying to do. So I invite everybody to try to join it and to connect all these issues, environmental, social needs, and the question of military spending to each other. I also would ask you to support the ICANN campaign locally to force your governments, if not done, to support the ban treaty and to sign it, because this is what we need in the coming years to get rid of these nuclear arms. The second thing is the struggle against foreign military bases. Yesterday, I'm in Berlin now, not in Belgium, because yesterday we had a very important and interesting discussion on military bases. And we had many witnesses of the strength of local people facing or trying to struggle against these military bases. And we see that environmental, social question of women, for example, women exploitation, the questions of worker movements, that they are interlinked. So we need a big movement to make these struggles visible, and show also our solidarity. So with the aim of the closure of US military bases in the Pacific. And that could help peace forward, I think, in the region. Once there was the World Social Forum, was the driving force behind the worldwide demonstrations against the war in Iraq. So we should seriously think about revitalizing this important platform of civil society, because it's the place where we can discuss and where we meet and we can try to plan our actions and to connect each other's actions to have an impact. I think this is something we should think about. Maybe, I hope, next year, when Corona is finished, you never know, we are able to have a new World Social Forum in order to try to have this impact again. A fourth thing is maybe to address the emerging Cold War between US and China, or it is already a Cold War. We need to promote a political process. And I think we can show or remind political leaders what has been happening during the Cold War in Europe. That time in the 70s, there was the Helsinki process that led to the Helsinki Final Act in 1975 that resulted in concrete agreements on disarmament and confidence building measures. And under auspices of the UN, a political process can be initiated with successive rounds of negotiations to address the various problems in the Pacific. And I think it's important to support the United Nations that has been weakened by NATO. And this could be an opportunity for the United Nations to be more on the forefront to address this kind of new Cold War 2.0 again. It's possible to build, for example, on the Declaration of Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea that was concluded in 2011 between different countries in the region, and which should also be respected by countries such as India and the US that abuse the freedom of navigation for provocative military passages and oil drilling. So last but not least, I think the aggressive confrontation policy of the US is often reversed by the same media, mainstream media in the West, as if China were the aggressor. I think it's clear that the US is the main problem now with its aggressive policy in the South, in the Pacific and worldwide. The US is pursuing a military containment policy that is understandably unacceptable for China. Imagine Chinese warships sailing off the coast in the US. So as a peace movement, we must counter this one-sided, as already has been said, I think it's important, this one-sided view of mainstream media by pointing also to, and mainly to the US aggression. And China's, I think, in this, China's multilateral efforts to resolve the disputes in the region, and the fact that China militarily, unlike the US, is mainly active in its own region. We should try convince journalists, mainstream, we have always also journalists open for that, to convince that there is another, to balance this view. And of course, we have our own means through websites we should use maybe better and more planned as we do now. I thank you very much.